the Central Highlands of Vietnam, on November 20, 2025, woke up to the full force of a catastrophe that had been building quietly for days. Since November 17th, a rare atmospheric combination had hovered above Gia Lai, and can hold a collision of cold air, monsoon winds, and warm tropical moisture that unleashed one of the heaviest rainfalls ever recorded in the region. Some districts saw 400 to 700 millimeters in a single day, and in isolated pockets, rainfall reached 110 millimeters in just 1 hour. Weather stations overflowed, sensors malfunctioned, and rivers rose so fast that longtime residents said they had never seen anything like it, not even in the historic floods of the 1990s. By the early morning of November 20th, the signs of the unfolding disaster became impossible to ignore. Near Alco, a small suspended bridge connecting rural communities faced the full impact of the surging river below. Overnight, what was normally a peaceful stream had transformed into a violent torrent. Uprooted trees, bamboo poles, and debris slammed against the bridge's tall pillars. The vibration grew stronger with each impact. Villagers gathered helplessly on both sides, watching the cables strain like strings pulled to breaking point. Then it happened. With a deep metallic crack, the central section snapped and collapsed into the raging brown water. The crowd gasped as the lifeline their community depended on vanished in seconds. Not far away, another moment of tension unfolded. A blue cargo truck attempted to cross a flooded road near Hydropower village. The driver, likely thinking the water wasn't too high, drove forward despite shouts from residents warning him to stop. Within seconds, the current lifted the truck, pushing it sideways until it stalled in the middle of the torrent. Water slammed into its sides, rising dangerously fast. The driver climbed out through the window and onto the roof, gripping the metal tightly as waves crashed around him. People on the riverbank called for help, but rescue teams were already overwhelmed elsewhere. The man waited alone, soaked, terrified, as the swollen river threatened to drag the vehicle downstream. These scenes multiplied across the region. The relentless rainfall was only part of the tragedy. Upstream, hydropower reservoirs had reached dangerous levels. Plants such as Sangbai H, Krong Hanang, and Bac Kring were forced to discharge tens of thousands of cubic meters per second to prevent dam failure. The release combined with sky-falling rain to create what locals described as a flood on top of a flood. By sunrise, entire districts were submerged. In Ao Kar, Kring PCC, Simgar, and Kring Yang, water rose so quickly that families barely had time to escape. Many homes saw levels jump from knee-height to chest height in less than 2 hours. In some villages, the water climbed 40 centimeters every 10 minutes. Wooden homes lifted off their foundations. Concrete houses collapsed under the pressure of fast-moving water. Inside Buin Ma Thuot City, the disaster took on an urban form. Streets where cafes and motorbikes usually filled the morning air became swirling rivers. The sound of horns and traffic was replaced by the roar of rushing water and the crash of floating debris. Major roads like La Duan, Wai Mon, Yuan Cang Turc, and Phan Chu Trinh transformed into muddy canals. Cars floated aimlessly, pushed by invisible currents. Storefronts were submerged. Refrigerators, plastic chairs, rice sacks, and furniture drifted through intersections. In the tight alleys of Tan Le, Ao Tam, and Tian, families struggled to keep their belongings above the rising tide. Some balanced televisions, mattresses, and bags of clothes on shelves or tables. Others rushed to rooftops with their children, shouting for help. In one alley, residents washed dishes in floodwater because clean water lines had broken and wells were contaminated. It was a surreal but practical response in a moment when survival reshaped daily habits. Beyond the city limits, the tragedy expanded into the countryside. Gia Lai, known as Vietnam's coffee capital, faced devastating losses. Entire plantations, decades-old coffee trees, pepper vines, cassava fields vanished under 2 to 3 meters of muddy water. The deep green farmland was transformed into a vast brown lake stretching far beyond the horizon. Farmers watched helplessly as their year's income, and in some cases the work of entire generations, disappeared. The transportation network collapsed. Landslides tore apart sections of Phong Hon Pass. National Highways 29, 26, and 19C were blocked in multiple places. Even Highway 1, Vietnam's most important route, became impassable. Villages in mountainous areas like Yang Mao and Yang Han were completely cut off, reachable only by boat or helicopter. As conditions worsened, emergency forces launched a massive response. In Đắk Lắk alone, more than 7,700 households were evacuated within 48 hours. Soldiers waded through chest-deep water carrying elderly residents on their backs. Helicopters from Air Division 370 to drop food, medicine, and life jackets to isolated hamlets. Volunteers formed human chains to help families cross dangerous currents. In schools converted into rescue centers, hundreds of people gathered on mats, sharing donated food and waiting for news from home. Other provinces suffered heavily as well. In Gia Lai, over 42,000 people were cut off when rivers overflowed. In Khánh Hòa, landslides killed several residents, including 6 in the tragic collapse at Can La Pass. Rivers like the Khai Na Trang and Khai Phan Rang exceeded their highest alert levels. Aerial footage in your video shows the full magnitude of the disaster. Buen Ma Thao appears as a mosaic of rooftops floating in muddy water. Cars lie overturned, shops are filled with debris, entire neighborhoods merge into a single vast floodplain. And far beyond the city, rice paddies, cornfields, and coffee farms stretch underwater as far as the eye can see. In the final moments of the montage, the camera shifts to the people on the front lines, soldiers carrying elderly villagers, rescue boats gliding between treetops that barely break the water's surface, helicopters lowering supplies to stranded families, farmers standing silently in the flooded remnants of their fields, children wrapped in emergency blankets, watching the sky for help. The 2025 Central Highlands flood was more than a natural disaster. It exposed deep vulnerabilities in infrastructure, land use, and hydropower management. But it also revealed something powerful: the resilience of the Vietnamese people. Communities supported each other. Strangers became lifelines. Volunteers traveled from distant provinces to help those they had never met. As the waters finally began to recede, they left behind scars, mud, broken homes, ruined crops, and painful memories. But they also left behind lessons, reminding future generations of the need for preparation, unity, and respect for nature's force. It was a moment that reshaped landscapes, livelihoods, and the collective memory of an entire region. A moment captured in every collapsed bridge, every stranded truck, every flooded alley, every devastated field. And in the courage of every soldier, volunteer, and survivor who refused to give up.
Hiệu đi. Tapi ini đi nhà là con mình đẹp đi tỏi này làm bên này chụp kiện đi thì mà khuya rồi tới khuya đó rồi làm biết mình em phải chọn rồi ôi trời đây dạ này mình đi chụp chuyện đi thì